driving into it. I just don't get up in the morning and ask myself that. We know they have weapons of mass destruction. We know they have active programs. There isn't any debate about it. So the idea that if you had an appropriate inspection regime, that they'd come back and say you were wrong is so far beyond anyone's imagination that it's not something I think about.
We've just concluded a really good meeting with members of the United States Congress to discuss our national security and discuss how best to keep the peace. We are moving toward a strong resolution. And all of us, and many others in Congress, are united in our determination to confront an urgent threat to America. According to the British government, the Iraqi regime could launch a biological or chemical attack in as little as 45 minutes after the order were given.
Is the U.S. in any way exaggerating or misleading the American public in regard to the potential threat posed by Iraq?
Is the U.S. government, you mean the senior members of the administration? Not to my knowledge. And if I knew of an instance, I would certainly correct it.
Saddam Hussein is a homicidal dictator who is addicted to weapons of mass destruction. We agree that the Iraqi dictator must not be permitted to threaten America and the world with horrible poisons and diseases and gases and atomic weapons. We've also discovered through intelligence that Iraq has a growing fleet of manned and unmanned aerial vehicles that could be used to disperse chemical or biological weapons across broad areas. We're concerned that Iraq is exploring ways of using these UAVs for missions targeting the United States. Saddam Hussein has held numerous meetings with Iraqi nuclear scientists, a group he calls his nuclear mujahideen, his nuclear holy warriors. If the Iraqi regime is able to produce, buy, or steal an amount of highly enriched uranium a little larger than a single softball, it could have a nuclear weapon in less than a year. Facing clear evidence of peril, we cannot wait for the final proof, the smoking gun that could come in the form of a mushroom cloud. The dictator of Iraq is a student of Stalin, using murder as a tool of terror and control within his own cabinet, within his own army, and even within his own family. On Saddam Hussein's orders, opponents have been decapitated. Wives and mothers of political opponents have been systematically raped as a method of intimidation. And political prisoners have been forced to watch their own children being tortured. Failure to act would embolden other tyrants, allow terrorists access to new weapons and new resources, and make blackmail a permanent feature of world events. Later this week, the United States Congress will vote on this matter. I have asked Congress to authorize the use of America's military, if it proves necessary, to enforce UN Security Council demands.
I hope the United States Congress will act promptly on its resolution, because that will show that America is united behind this effort. And with that congressional resolution, then I think our efforts to get a UN resolution are strengthened. And I hope that this will all come about in the not-too-distant future, within a matter of days or perhaps a week or two.
The resolution I'm about to sign symbolizes the united purpose of our nation, expresses the considered judgment of the Congress, and marks an important event in the life of America. The 107th Congress is one of the few called by history to authorize military action to defend our country and the cause of peace. Congress has now authorized the use of force. I have not ordered the use of force. I hope the use of force will not become necessary. Yet confronting the threat posed by Iraq is necessary by whatever means that requires.
Any resolution that comes out of the United Nations, I'm sure, will contain an indictment against Iraq, which we asked for. It will contain a new tough inspection regime, and it will make clear that Iraq will face consequences if they frustrate and violate this new inspection regime.
You know, I laid out a doctrine, and you just got to know it still stands. It said, either you're with us, either you love freedom and with nations which embrace freedom, or you're with the enemy. There's no in between, and that doctrine still stands. If we get any kind of hint, any evidence whatsoever that somebody might be thinking about doing something to America, we're moving, we're disrupting, we're denying, we're doing everything we can to protect the homeland. Doesn't matter how long it takes. When it comes to the defense of our freedoms, we will stay the course. I believe out of the evil done to America is going to come some incredible good. I believe that we can achieve peace if we are strong and focused and diligent, if we stay tough when we need to be tough, stay strong when we need to be strong, speak clearly about good and evil. I know that if we remember our values, remember that freedom is not an America's gift to the world, freedom is a God-given gift to the world. If we remember that values, and that's why I went to the United Nations. I said to that august body, for the sake of keeping the peace, we want you to be effective. For the sake of keeping the world free, we want you to be an effective body. It's up to you, however. You can show the world whether you got the backbone necessary to enforce your edicts or whether you're going to turn out to be just like the League of Nations. Your choice to make. And my message to Saddam Hussein is that for the sake of peace, for the sake of freedom, you must disarm like you said you would do. But my message to you all and to the country is this: for the sake of our future freedoms and for the sake of world peace, if the United Nations can't act, and if Saddam Hussein won't act, the United States will lead a coalition of nations to disarm Saddam Hussein. And so the next step will be to put an inspection regime in there after all the declarations and after all the preamble to inspections that he's got to show the world he's disarming. And that's where we'll be next. Judy.
Thank you, Mr. President. You said this afternoon that the UN Security Council vote tomorrow would bring the civilized world together against Iraq. But broad opposition remains all over the world to your policy. Will you continue to try to build support? If so, how will you do that? Or do you think that a Security Council vote would be all the mandate you need?
Yeah. First of all, broad opposition around the world, not in support of my policy on Iraq? Yes, sir. Well, I think most people around the world realize that Saddam Hussein is a threat. And no one likes war. But they also don't like the idea of Saddam Hussein having a nuclear weapon. Imagine what would happen. And by the way, we don't know how close he is to a nuclear weapon right now. We know he wants one, but we don't know.
As the President has said, this is a fight to save the civilized world. This is a struggle against evil, against an enemy that rejoices in the murder of innocent, unsuspecting human beings. President Bush has often spoken of how America can keep the peace by redefining war on our terms. But for all the progress we've made in the war on terror, one thing is abundantly clear. Our nation is still in danger. There is also a grave danger that al-Qaeda or other terrorists will join with outlaw regimes that have these weapons to attack their common enemy, the United States of America. That is why confronting the threat posed by Iraq is not a distraction from the war on terror. It is absolutely crucial to winning the war on terror.
Does the United States have the evidence to know when Iraq presents its declaration? Will you be able to look at that and tell whether they're telling the truth and being forthcoming, or will you be able to tell right away that you're on a path to war with Iraq?
Well, the latter is, of course, a decision for the President, the Security Council, other countries to make judgments about. It's not for me. The United States knows that Iraq has weapons of mass destruction. The UK knows that they have weapons of mass destruction. Any country on the face of the earth with an active intelligence program knows that Iraq has weapons of mass destruction.
The President has said that Iraqi cooperation is not encouraging yesterday, and Kofi Annan today says cooperation seems to be good by the Iraqis.
Is the glass half empty, half full? Well, I don't see that's a big deal.
You don't?
No.
Mr. Secretary?
I mean, they seem to be doing what is being asked of them by inspectors, and by that, Kofi Annan says cooperation seems to be good. Why is cooperation not good?
You have to ask the President.
They're letting people in.
Maybe he's looking at intelligence that somebody else isn't seeing. I don't know.
This government will continue to lead the world toward more peace, and we hope to resolve all the situations in which we find ourselves in a peaceful way. That's my commitment, to try to do so peacefully. But I want to remind people that Saddam Hussein, the choice is his to make as to whether or not the Iraqi situation is resolved peacefully. You said we're headed to war in Iraq. I don't know why you say that. I hope we're not headed to war in Iraq. I'm the person who gets to decide, not you. And I hope this can be done peacefully. We've got a military presence there to remind Saddam Hussein, however, that when I say we will lead a coalition of the willing to disarm him if he chooses not to disarm, I mean it. The use of military force is this nation's last option. Yet if force becomes necessary to secure our country and to keep the peace, America will act deliberately. America will act decisively. And America will prevail because we've got the finest military in the world.
As we begin the new year, our military forces are poised around the world, ready to meet any threat. Specific to the Persian Gulf, the flow of forces to the region continues. We've seen a few units depart for the Gulf and can expect that deliberate force flow to continue. And while there has been no decision about Iraq, we want to ensure that we are prepared to provide the President as much flexibility as possible.
Yesterday, we saw tens of thousands of demonstrators converge on Washington. They say we should not go to war against Iraq. I would just like to ask you this morning, what do you say to those people?
What I would say to them is that the President is trying every means not to go to war, but the decision to go to war is in the hands of Saddam Hussein.
Well, Mr. Blix has said that it may take several months more to come to some sort of definitive conclusion about whether he has disarmed it or not. President Chirac of France said yesterday, and these are his words, "Wisdom requires that we grant the inspector's request for more time."
What we have to make a judgment on now is whether or not Saddam Hussein is serious about disarming, and is he cooperating with the inspectors in that disarmament process.
So just to make sure I understand what you're saying a lack of cooperation would be reason enough to take military action.
What I'm saying is that Iraq has an obligation under 1441 and earlier resolutions to disarm. And one way to demonstrate that they are disarmed or are going to disarm is to cooperate with the inspectors and help the inspectors do their job. Time is running out.
What should the public know right now about what a war with Iraq would look like and what the cost would be?
Cost in dollars or cost in lives?
Dollars and human costs.
Mm-hmm. Well, the lesser important is the cost in dollars. Human life is a treasure. Office of Management and Budget estimated it would be something under $50 billion.
Outside estimates say up to $300 billion.